So thanks, Jessica. I'm just going to wait a couple seconds here for you to load my presentation. Great, thanks, Connor. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you, Jessica and Neil. So I'm joining you from Ottawa, from the Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and I will be presenting you today a quick update on the Arctic region. So I'll start just with a next slide, please. I'll just talk a little bit about our mandate. So as Canadians' national civilian fleet, the Coast Guard, which is a special operating agency of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, is responsible to ensure safe and accessible waterways for Canada. It has the mandate to protect individuals navigating on Canadian waters, protect the environment from spills, support economic growth by being Canada's on-water economic enabler, and ensuring Canada's sovereignty by establishing a strong federal presence in the waters in the Arctic. We provide more than 8,500 person-hours of programs and services to local communities, and Canadian Coast Guard has a long history of serving the Arctic throughout the year for community resupply, search and rescue, marine environmental response, responding to vessels of concern, supporting marine navigation, tending to aids to navigation, icebreaking services, supporting safe and accessible waterways, and providing marine communication and traffic services, and also training the auxiliary. So next slide, please. So here is the range of the services that we provide. I'm just going to touch on a few. So Coast Guard provides 24/7, 364 days, 365 days a year search and rescue services in partnership with the National Defence, the Canadian Armed Forces, and provides over 4,000 volunteer members in the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary. We also have an inshore rescue boat, a rescue station in Rankin Inlet that provides search and rescue services in Hudson Bay. We provide icebreaking and program services. We deploy 7 to 9 icebreakers per season in the Arctic. We escort through ice-infested waters. We maintain sovereignty, as mentioned, and we support Coast Guard programs and also create a platform for the delivery of programs and services of other federal departments, ecosystem science, surveying, and charting in the Arctic. We provide aids to navigation to support safe and efficient transit of vessels in Arctic waters. Coast Guard has an important role in Canada's maritime security and enforcement landscape in the Arctic. And we work on information sharing and building maritime domain awareness with our partners in the Arctic. And as mentioned, we provide marine communication traffic services in Iqaluit and support traffic services, navigational warnings, and program information. We also provide environmental response. So we're the lead agency for ship source and mystery marine pollution incidents. And we also engage with partners in the North to respond to the increased demand for an environmental response capacity and training. Okay, next slide, please. So since the announcement of the Arctic region in October of 2018, where the minister announced the new Arctic region for DFO and Coast Guard, we've been doing extensive engagement with partners in the Arctic. So this includes provinces and territories, industry, Inuit, First Nation, and Métis partners. And we've heard 6 themes, and I'm going to go through them in turn. So next slide, please. So we heard that there's a need for increased capacity, service delivery, and presence of DFO and Coast Guard programs and services in the North. You'll see here on the map on the right where the boundaries of the Arctic region are, which includes Inuit Nunangat, all of Inuit Nunangat, James Bay, Hudson Bay marine areas, and NWT, so the Mackenzie River. And surrounding areas. And we work really closely with Inuit, Métis, and First Nation partners on the priorities and identification of these priorities in the Arctic region. So in terms of increasing presence, I'm just going to give you an update on some of the things and some of the momentum that we have. We've been working on our partners to address some of these priorities that we've collectively outlined for the Arctic region. As part of the creation of the Arctic region, our intention is really to better align our programs and services with Northern priorities and also to advance reconciliation. So as of April 2021, the Arctic region is fully operational in the Arctic. So the environmental response, search and rescue, marine communication and traffic services are all reporting to the Arctic region. We're really growing and staffing our headquarters in Yellowknife and also in Iqaluit. And we've also hired community engagement coordinators that are located throughout the Arctic region. We're really looking to expand our search and rescue and environmental programs, and we're working with our partners to do so. We are running operational exercises in the north with our northern partners, and we're continuing to seek new talent to be able to staff more people from the department in the Arctic region. Next slide, please. The other thing we heard is about including Indigenous knowledge in decision-making. So as I mentioned, we are working with community engagement coordinators that are located throughout the Arctic, and they're really helping the Coast Guard to build capacity internally to understand the principles of Indigenous knowledge and include Indigenous knowledge in decision-making. We also just launched our Arctic Youth Council, and this is a map of where they're located. And this is really part of what we had heard as the importance of involving youth in the Arctic and creating a platform for youth to share their interests and their views of the Arctic region. And they're also going to be supporting us with our efforts in partnership with the Inuit Circumpolar Council that's working on how to integrate Indigenous knowledge and response planning in the Arctic. We continue to work with land claim organizations and other Indigenous organizations to ensure that they are aware of when we are coming, and that we are aware of traditional activities like hunting that are occurring in the areas that we're providing programs and services. And we're really looking to work with federal partners, the Environment and Climate Change Canada and other government departments that are looking at how to use Indigenous knowledge to inform ice conditions in the Arctic. We've also supported a number of projects that were priorities from our partners in the Arctic, and one of them was the CQ app, which looks at integrating Indigenous knowledge in decision making. Next slide, please. One of the very strong themes that we heard is that policy making really needs to be led from the north, from Northerners. And we are aware and have been reading the numerous reports that are driven from the Arctic. Jessica, you mentioned the Deloitte report. NTI has done an infrastructure report. The Dene has written their strategy and provided it to us. So we really are working at looking at these reports, looking at the priorities and seeing what policy looks like driven from the north. We are working with our partners currently to develop regional governance models with our Inuit, First Nation, and Métis partners to not only identify the priorities moving forward, but also to create a platform to implement these priorities with our partners in collaboration. We recognize that there is that our approach is to be a distinctions-based approach from everything from funding. We are part of the conversation on the Inuit Nunavut policy and are working with the Inuit Inuit Crown Partnership Committee to support these conversations and putting in place the Inuit Nunavut policy. And we're also working on governance to support the Northern Low Impact Shipping Corridors, which is looking at both the governance to make decisions and design the corridors, and also looking at identifying priority areas for investment in the Arctic. Next slide, please. We heard a lot about removing employment barriers and creating job opportunities in the Arctic. We're working with DFO to develop a Northern recruitment and retention strategy. We are continuing to recruit Inuit, First Nation, and Métis to Coast Guard members. I mentioned previously that we launched our Arctic Youth Council and hired community engagement coordinators. And we're really looking to work with, and we have been working with land claim organizations to be part of our recruitment process, and also to help us seek talent in the Arctic region. Next slide, please. The co-development of climate change strategies. This was also one of the priorities listed. We are responding to changing and unpredictable ice conditions in the Arctic. We are participating in climate change roundtables with Northern partners and also with other federal departments. We are supporting and working in collaboration with academic research on changing climate and ice conditions and implementation for infrastructure. And we continue to work with communities in the Arctic in terms of the changing ice conditioning and responding to those in live time. I'm going to speak a little bit, next slide, please. I'm going to speak a little bit more to addressing the infrastructure gap in the next presentation. But here I just want to highlight, and Jessica, you touched on it, is there are significant infrastructure gaps, and there are also lots of opportunities for innovation and investments in the Arctic. And we're seeing some of those investments from the Government of Canada through the National Shipbuilding Strategy, from ongoing delivery of Ocean Protection Plan initiatives and the Blue Economy Strategy. And now we're moving into the Oceans Protection Plan 2. We're really looking to work with our partners to identify those gaps and put them forward under new funding umbrellas moving forward. And we're, as mentioned, we're participating in infrastructure working groups under the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee and other forums. Next slide, please. So we're really looking at doing things differently in the Arctic. I will say that since the development of the Arctic region, we now have an entire region that works solely on Arctic related issues. Everything from environmental response, search and rescue, ice breaking. So these are dedicated staff that work to support Arctic priorities. We're going to continue to strengthen our communications and build our partnerships with industry, with academics, with Inuit, First Nation, and Métis partners to really look at enhancing security, safety, environmental, and economic interests in the Arctic. And we're going to continue to improve the operational readiness and marine safety to ensure safe navigation in the economic arteries of the Arctic. As we move forward, we're going to continue these partnerships. And in my next presentation, I'll talk about the future of Coast Guard services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of services in the Arctic region. So next slide, please. So I'm assuming that most of us here on this call are very well aware of the unique challenges for the delivery of programs and services in the Arctic region. There's less than 10% of the Arctic navigable waters that are surveyed to modern standards. We are seeing continued interest internationally for resource development, shipping, transit in the Arctic. On the community side, we're seeing lots of interest in building capacity for search and rescue and environmental response, and particularly in marine domain awareness. We are seeing major projects, and I'm going to talk about some of the government investments that are coming up that will also sort of help address the previous question. But here I'm just going to point out, tourism also is a huge interest. So adventure tourism. So here I've put two pictures, one of the Kiwi Roa, the New Zealand vessel that was transiting the Northwest Passage, as well as the most current vessel that is heading to the Arctic from Shanghai, which is a Chinese vessel that seeks to navigate without stop in the Arctic. And so some of these now, back to the sort of the work that we've been doing is we've been supporting the Inuit Marine Monitoring Program, and they have marine monitors out on the water, and we've been working with Transport Canada to support sort of these alternative delivery that are really locally based programs. And the Kiwi Roa is one of the vessels that was spotted by one of the marine monitors as part of that program. Next slide, please. So just to speak a little bit more to the economic development and the investments in the Arctic, the Oceans Protection Plan, which was launched in 2016, was one of the largest investments made to protect Canadian waters and coastlines. It was 1.5 billion over 5 years. Really the focus of the Oceans Protection Plan was to make marine shipping safer, increase protection of marine species and coastal ecosystem, and really building partnerships with Indigenous people and coastal communities. We're looking forward, we're looking at the Oceans Protection Plan 2, and under that umbrella, we are having discussions now with our partners to look at what programs, what pieces of infrastructure that we can move on under that initiative moving forward. We also have the Blue Economy Strategy, and I suspect that many on this call have also participated in either roundtables with the minister or engagements on the blue economy. And that really is the government's strategy to really look at how we're going to highlight sort of an economic growth opportunities, and while making steps to ensure that we sustain the health of our fisheries and oceans moving forward. So under the umbrella of these two funding or under the context of these two initiatives, we're having those discussions about what that looks like in terms of investments in the Arctic. Next slide, please. So one of the other federal initiatives that received significant funds under the budget was to help Canada achieve its marine conservation targets. So we know that coastal and marine tourism supports about 6.5 million jobs, and it's second to economic development to industrial fishing. There's a growing interest in the Arctic, in tourism in the Arctic, and DFO and Environment and Climate Change Canada are advancing plans in partnership with partners in the North to conserve 25% of Canada's ocean by 2025 and 30% by 2030. So we are working closely with our federal colleagues. We have been working on the implementation of the Inuit Impact Benefit Agreement that's part of the Talariptamunga project. And from that, there are small craft harbors and other investments that are being made as part of these marine conservation projects moving forward. So this is another piece where infrastructure is developing within these areas moving forward. Next slide, please. We are also seeing funds under the National Shipbuilding Strategy. So our recent announcement of 2 polar icebreakers were announced in May of 2021. We have 7 to 9 icebreakers that serve the Arctic from May to November. These additional polar icebreakers are going to add additional capacity, not replace, but create additional capacity in the Arctic. We have 3 new medium interim icebreakers, and we've announced 16 new multi-purpose vessels and 2 new Arctic offshore patrol ships. We are also had an announcement on the investment of 6 new icebreakers, and we are working on a fleet recapitalization plan for a light icebreakers. So all this to say is that within these, the National Shipbuilding Strategy, that we will be seeing some discussions on infrastructure to support additional icebreaking capacity and vessels that are planned for the Arctic. Next slide, please. So here, there's a graphic here on the sort of different large ships and small ships that we're going to have as part of our fleet in the Arctic. And next slide, please. And in terms of marine infrastructure, so I mentioned previously that we have been working with Transport Canada on the development of low impact shipping corridors. Part of that is to build a governance model to design and manage the corridors. And then the other piece of that is to identify priority areas for investments. That's an ongoing conversation. We're planning to go out and engage again on the northern low impact shipping corridors. In terms of the small craft harbors, we know under the Inuit Impact Benefit Agreement that Transport Canada and DFO have identified small craft harbors for Clyde River, Arctic Bay, Grise Fort, and Resolute Bay. We know that there are port projects that are advancing in Tuktoyaktuk and Iqaluit. And again, there is going to be more discussions on the infrastructure required, and we'll be working with our partners to in future to look at what that infrastructure to service and support the polar infrastructure, and also to address some of the needs that we've been hearing from communities in terms of using that infrastructure. With that, I am happy to answer any questions. I know that I went through that quite quickly, but I'm happy to respond to any questions regarding the future of Coast Guard services and what that looks like in future, as well as any federal investments in the Arctic.